Hi, everyone. In this set of lectures, we're going to be talking about management and leadership. We're going to be covering management and bureaucracy, scientific management, project management, IS, IT project success and failure factors, team performance, and leadership styles. So let's first establish basic ideas of what it is to manage. And from the Merriam-Webster dictionary, we have here the conducting. So it's kind of action of supervising of something, usually a business, but it can be other kinds of activities as well. This interesting word here, judicious use of means to accomplish an end. So it's a thoughtful activity, perhaps an analytical, cognitive activity, and also the collective body of those who manage or direct an enterprise, meaning that's more related to the word management itself. And manage is often related to the concept of bureaucracy. So I wanted to also discuss this idea here because bureaucracy is central to the understanding of all modern institutions. And here I have some ideal typical characteristics, mainly according to Max Weber, one of the original writers or early writers on bureaucracy, but which I think were so good that they still hold to this day. And the bureaucracy are institutions with a rigid division of labor to accomplish tasks. And there is usually also a distinction between the workers and the managers. And there is a chain of command, which is firmly established. And this chain of command is also, another term for this is hierarchy. I'm not sure if I'm going to spell this correctly. There's a hierarchy, which can be used to coerce others, of course, to the extent enabled and restricted by internal and external regulations. And also the duties and tasks are regularly and continuously fulfilled. So we got to, as we all know, in our modern institutions, we go to work a set of time, 9 to 5, Monday through Friday, and so on. You cannot just choose one day to work and another not to work. And these are performed by people with certified qualifications, another important characteristic which distinguishes our modern institutions or modern bureaucratic institutions from more traditional, aristocratic, monarchic, medieval institutions, where decisions were based on feelings or personal affiliations and so on. Of course, there are many ideas on characteristics of bureaucracy. Bureaucracy is usually associated with public sector or government entities, although bureaucracy is a set of processes in both private and public sector agencies. I'm not going to focus on this whole lecture on bureaucracy, but just a contrasting view here from the economist, libertarian economist Ludwig von Mises. And there is a distinction between profit management and bureaucratic management. It's kind of interesting that they removed the bureaucratic management from the profit sector agencies because there's still a bureaucracy following these rigid division of labor, hiring people with certain qualifications and performing tasks in a regular manner and so on. So he distinguishes profit management versus bureaucratic management, and profit management is in the context of profit-seeking institutions and when provides freedom to make decisions for profit maximization. So this is in a kind of an ideal sense, that's what happens. And also in bureaucratic management, render useful service. There's the management to render useful service to the public, and the performance of the individuals are evaluated based on relation to laws. So it's not just any private, it's not a profit seeking, and in many cases it's incongruent. Activities of governments and activities of bureaucratic management could not be based on profit seeking. So, putting out fires or police services and so on. So they are evaluated based on relation to loss. And as we discussed before, there are 3 basic types of organizations for profit, which are organizations created to make a profit and benefit their own financial interest not-for-profit organizations created to benefit a cause, social group, or the environment, and government organizations which are created to fulfill the functions of a political system or political jurisdiction. Now, there are other kinds of definitions as well. Public benefit corporations, which could be for profit, but benefit the public in some way. But these are the three major ones. Let's recall we also discussed various dimensions across which these three types of organizations differ in terms of their purpose, in terms of their funding, in terms of their audience, in terms of their leadership, in terms of their culture, in theory and in practice, from the people that are in them, or from the top structural elements, the taxation that they are subjugated to, and the staff, what the staff do usually are pretty similar, but the kinds of people, but also specific kinds of staff will differ, of course, internally within for-profit, within nonprofit, but also across them as well. Another concept that I would like to bring up here for this discussion on management is scientific management. So scientific management is the systematization and rationalization of labor and work processes to increase efficiency and productivity. And this idea was first well elaborated by Frederick Winslow Teller, and sometimes associated with Taylorism, in his famous book on scientific management published in 1911, where he justified the scientific management on this idea that, well, the greatest, quote, the greatest prosperity for employer and workman can exist only as the result of the greatest possible productivity. So when each man and each machine are turning out the largest possible output. So there's this notion also of maximizing efficiency too, right? So not only just profit, but maximizing efficiency, which is also minimizing cost. And to him, it made sense that to do that, first of all, is a good thing. We all should aim to maximize our efficiency, reduce the cost, and create the greatest possible productivity. And that is done via a systematization and rationalization of the work processes. Without this kind of systematization, rationalization, even the studies of people measuring how long it takes for one person to screw a screw into the wheel of the car and analyze why they may be taking longer, what is hindering them, what can help them to be faster, and so on. This process is called scientific management. And although we don't use these terms and this term anymore, I think it's pretty well understood that this is how we approach organizations today. We're still applying principles of scientific management. It really rules all our bureaucratic institutions to a certain extent, both for profit, government, and nonprofit. And these existing principles of scientific management that are in organizations today include analysis and synthesis. So like kind of two parts of the same coin, right? You analyze, you break down the processes, and you put them back together in a manner which will increase productivity, will increase efficiency, will help you achieve your goals. The rationality and empiricism, so actually looking at how things are happening, so not just making decisions based on your feelings, but actually examining the data, the past results, what happened to the products in the previous iterations, and analyzing those and making syntheses, making conclusions about what to change. Things like work ethic and efficiency and so on are still principles in most organizations. Standardization of best practices, so making sure that things are written down, principles are laid out, people discuss them, people share them, people understand them and follow them. Questioning of tradition. I think we're still kind of breaking away from this, and often there is, a much much action based on tradition. So for example, how people dress and so on. Now here's a picture of Facebook headquarters office, and you can see, I don't see anybody wearing a suit and tie. But in some other contexts, the tradition of suit and tie, which may actually not be rational or increase efficiency, or maybe it does, who knows? But they're still followed because of tradition, right? Because somebody liked it and they wanted to do so. So still kind of open questions, but application of mass production, knowledge transfer between workers to tools and processes. So these were all elaborated under scientific management, and they're still part of our work today. An interesting example too, kind of expanding into the area of data science and big science. And we can see how scientific management is still ruling the day, even when we include new information technologies and the concept and the existence of big data. So extending scientific management prisms to the use of data for decision-making in organization is a thing we're dealing with. And there's an interesting example from Moneyball, which is a book written by Michael Lewis about a baseball team, Oakland A's, that decided to not make decisions simply based on the feelings of the people and the players that worked in the team or that managed the team, but actually look at the data, to make decisions about who they're going to hire, who they're going to bring in their team, based on characteristics of those players that can predict how well they're going to play. So previously they thought that, how hard a person hits or how many home runs a person have or how fast they are, those are the characteristics that are going to predict a good player. And those good players are going to cost more, and only the richer teams are going to be able to purchase them. But those characteristics were kind of just hunches, right? They were like gut decisions. So this Moneyball tells the story of this team that wanted to take a more scientific management approach and a more data-based approach to their decisions. And of course, there's also the movie made from the book. And there's some quote here you can find on the Wikipedia of this book. Rigorous statistical analysis had demonstrated that on-base percentage and slugging percentage, which are metrics of individual players, are better indicators of offensive success. And the Oakland A's team became convinced that these qualities were cheaper to obtain on the open market than more historically valued qualities such as speed and contact, because nobody was paying attention to these kinds of measures, although they had them or they could get them. So they made a bet that, and because of rigorous statistical analysis, looking at the data of several players over several seasons and so on, they actually found out what players were being undervalued and purchased those players and actually did quite well. And that's the story of Moneyball. This theme, this story continues on all kinds of contexts. So often this is also called the HiPPO effect, which is the highest paid person's opinion. So often organizations make decisions on the opinions of the highest paid person, which is often subjective, biased, based on gut instincts and not really on the data and on the history of how actually things have turned out. There's this famous article by Andrew McAfee and Eric Bryovson in the Harvard Business Review, Big Data, the Management Revolution, where they write about this and they do a little study as well. It's an interview study, so kind of data-based, but a little bit very qualitative, but they find that the more companies characterize themselves as data-driven, the better they performed on objective measures of financial and operational results. Companies in the top third of their industry in the use of data-driven decision-making were on average 5% more productive and 6% more profitable than their competitors. Now, it's not terribly high, but it's not terribly low. But I think the argument is sound. There's a lot of discussion about the use of data science approaches, just the use of data itself to make decisions and management decision. I think this goes all the way back to the systematization and the rationalization of management processes. And it's part of management in IT institutions and other kinds of institutions today. That's all I have for this one, and I'll see you next time.